So now what we want to do is we want to take a look at how we can aggregate data. So in the last video, we took a look and we saw how we could flip between different things and export that information to new things, but it doesn't really actually simplify the data, right? So if we take a look at the CWGRM letters, there's still a lot of letters that are going on here. Even in the near battles one, right, we still have a lot of different pieces of information here. There are still 2,500 letters that are being talked about in these areas. And so that doesn't necessarily simplify the thing that we want most out of whatever it happens to be. And so when instead, what we want to do is we want to take a look and we want to say, okay, how can we simplify out some information that is going to be useful to me in another case? And so what we're going to do is we're going to pair a little bit of selection, and then we're going to join things together so that we can take a look and see what's going on. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the CWRGM REU tags. We're going to right click on that and we're going to go to our attribute table. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to pull out certain types of information that I have in this data set to see what else I can do with it. So one of the very first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to select and I'm going to make sure that my fields are going to be, and in particular, I want to make sure that my latitude is greater than 0. I only want things that actually have a latitude. Now, there's another way you can do this. You can do an is null, but in this case, if we're only looking at Mississippi, this is a perfectly functional way to do it. And so that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to do. And so then what you'll notice is that there's also a couple of things that we can then do for here. Right, so we can then say, okay, I want to filter my current selection, and I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to say, all right, I don't just want that. I now want from this data set, so from that subject latitude, I now want the types of information here. So I want the category to be political events. So this is going to pull all of the political events from last time, right? So category like, right? Single quote, we've got a %, and we're going to say politic, %, single quote. So this is going to go back through. Now, the last time we did this, this was just for the ones near battles. This now is going to have all of that. Now I'm going to click on this little down button, and I'm going to filter the current selection for that. And so what you'll notice is that 9,000 has actually gone down now to 138. So now I only have 138 points that are actually part of that data set. And you can see some of them cropping up through here, right? We have a few of them that are showing up as that bright yellow. So, but again, I still can't do anything with this, right? There's nothing really that's showing me any sort of trends in this data. And so what I want to do now is I want to do a spatial join. To do this, what we're first going to do is we're going to need to find all of our tools. So if we go to view and we go down to our toolbars, in our toolbars, there is, where is it? Sorry, it's not in the toolbars, it is actually in the panels. And in the panels, you have the processing toolbox. And so if I click this on, it's going to pop up on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side with this toolbox, these are all of the different things that are built into GIS that you can do. So I can do things like basic statistics. I can do things along lines. I can do a nearest neighbor analysis. Don't worry, we'll come back to that. Or I can do things like an overlap analysis. Now, in this case, none of those are what we're actually going to want to do, but they do have this handy dandy thing at the top that's called a search. And so what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to say I want to do a join. And so there's a couple of different things that you can do for joins. You can join information from one table to another table. You can do that having common indexes or common fields. That's not really what I want to do in this case. Instead, what I want to do is I want to join information instead by the location of it. Now you'll notice in this toolbox that there are two different ones. There's join attributes by location, and there's join attributes by location summary. So if you remember in the last one, I said that it depends on the perspective of the thing. So points are within polygons and polygons contain points. Those are two sides of the same coin. One of those is going to summarize information. One of those is going to not. So in this case, this matters for the joins because on one side of things, you can summarize information, and on the other side of things, you will give all information from one field to the other. So in this case, I have political things, but I want to aggregate them. I want to combine them. I want to summarize them by the polygons so that I can do something else. So maybe I want to take a look at the number of political events by the value of things. So the idea of that being that maybe in areas that are wealthier, they have more political events, or we can test that theory. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually use this summary one because this summary one is where I can aggregate values together. Now, I'm going to join the features in the REU, right? And I can, in this case, choose to use the selected features only. So this is going to restrict that data to just that 138 records that are currently being used. And then we have this exact same set of relationships that we talked about before. So I want to join the features that are in the CWRGM letters that are within the different economic variable data sets. And I can take a look in here and I can say, okay, well, how many of those are there? And I can say, actually, I believe I screwed this up. Join features, yes. I want to flip this around. Apologies, I want to flip this around. So I want to, again, the thing you want out is the thing at the top. So in this case, I want polygons out. If I want polygons out, the economic variables go at the top. The economic variables contain the CWGRM points. And it does have a selection, so this is the one we want. And then the fields to summarize should pop up with CRWGRM things. So now these are all the columns for the CWGRM. And so in this case, I can say, well, I want to know how many identifiers there are, and maybe I want to know something else, perhaps. In this case, I'm just going to go for the identifiers, and I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want. And then down here, that tells you which of the categories you want. This one down here tells you, well, what do I want to do with the categories? So in this case, I want to count how many unique times how many times it shows up, how many rows it shows up, and then I want to also count how many of those are unique. So the difference between these is that sometimes different subjects can come up multiple times. So maybe I was talking about two different political events. Maybe I was talking about a debate, which is a political event in that area, and the election that was happening. Those two things in one letter would show up as two different counts, right? Those are the two different mentions of different things that happened, but it was in one letter. The unique says, okay, well, how many unique letters were there? So maybe there was someone who just went on and on and on about a variety of different topics and a variety of different political events. They were just getting everything off of their chest, and they might have 20 different things that they mentioned, but it's just one letter. And so this provides a way to take a look at both of those things. And so I'm going to use both of those. And then down here, we can create a temporary layer, or we can save this. So I'm going to save this to a temporary file. I'm going to save this again to a GeoJSON. I'm going to save this into my downloads, same as everything else. And I'm going to say that this is aggregated political event data by county. That's what I'm going to say in this case. I'm going to save this out, and I'm going to say, okay, that's great. And I'm going to run this. It again has this nice red thing that says that the performance will be degraded. It's going to take a little bit of time, but because we're only dealing with 138 records, it should run fairly quickly. So you'll notice that even with this, I did screw up just a little bit. I had them flipped. So always double check what things you want out of it. Always think about what is the information I want out. Does that match what I'm seeing in the tool or in the information, right? There's a variety of different tools you can use, and you can play around with them, try them out, see what they do, right? Just always double check and make sure that you're getting the thing that you want out of it. And if you don't, then what you can do is you can flip them and see what happens if you switch your different inputs, if you switch what fields you deal with, right? Part of working with GIS and part of doing this kind of information and this kind of analysis is actually to take a look at all of the different potential things that you can do. And sometimes it's not too bad to be a little bit click happy. So as I said in a couple of earlier videos, right click, double click, see what happens with things. There's no harm in trying it out. And if the worst happens, well, then you'll have your data already backed up. And so then you can just re-put it in and you should be good to go again. So you don't really have to worry too much about breaking GIS. It's a very picky program, but ultimately it can do some really cool things. So try it out, see what you can do. And if you manage to break it, they actually have jobs for that. There is someone who used to break things and has a wonderful job at Esri breaking all of their things now. So what I'm going to do, you'll notice that now I have, it says that it finished, great, and you'll notice that I now have these polygons out. That was exactly what I wanted. I can right click on this, go to the attribute table, and all of a sudden I have the exact same thing that I had before. So I still have all my agricultural value things, but if I go all the way over to the right, what you'll notice is that then I have two different things. I have identifier count and identifier unique. Now, if I double click on this and double click again, it's going to show me what I have. So in this case, I have one that has 89 political events, one that has 18, one that has 2, and then about 4 that have 1. Now, what you'll notice here is that in this case, each identifier was in fact unique. So what this can tell us is that overall, there was, it looks like about 100 different letters that were done. But the important bit about this is that none of those letters were talking about the same thing. So all of the letters had unique things, and they only had one thing that they were talking about. So it wasn't just one person going on and talking about a lot of different things. The only one that did that is actually in this top one here. You'll see that there's 88 and there's 89. So in one of those letters in that top one, there was actually one letter that had 2 different mentions of political events. And so if I want to take a look and see where those things are located, I can go in here, I can go to properties, I can go to symbology, I can go to graduated colors. You can check out the symbology for more details on this. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to go down to count, I'm going to classify it. I'm not going to change everything. Actually, I'm going to change some things. Change this up. I want a, no. I want, let's go equal. I don't think it's going to give me much. There we go. Okay, so this one bit here is where there was a lot of political events. So now, then I'll want to take a look and see, okay, well, why was there a whole bunch of political events, and then what was happening in these other areas, perhaps, and what were the other things that were going on. So that's what we've got for doing summary things. But I did mention that there is also this other one here. And so if the thing was reversed and I wanted to put information from one into the other. So instead of having all of my information that was aggregated here, maybe I wanted to put the total population in all of the letters here. The population from or the agricultural values, one of those things into the letter set that I have. So what I can do is I can say, all right, so if I go back to my tags and I open this up, so I want to open up my attribute table. And I'm going to say, okay, what's something in this case that I think would have some sort of value that would make a lot of sense to put in either agricultural value or to put in some sort of economic value. And so we've got people, we've got towns, we've got businesses. We've got businesses. So let's take a look and let's put in our businesses and we can see what businesses there are. So in this case, I'm going to go to these REU tags. I'm going to go to fields, right? So I'm going to go to, wrong one, fields. I'm going to say category, And where does my category, where's my category like, single quote, wildcard, business, that one, wait, no, wildcard, that. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we have here. Well, we only have 2 businesses, so that's not really what we want here. So maybe we want something, maybe we also want occupations. So this is one thing I did not go over in the selection. I can actually put these together. So I can say, oh, well, I want to know where there is my category. I'm actually going to switch this out. I'm going to say category hierarchical, because that's the actual category I'm looking at, that is like business. Or I want to take a look and see, okay, I want to know where category hierarchical is also like, I said, occupation. Yep, that one. Now, I'm going to go back and make sure that I have all my wildcards in there. And I'm going to do this one instead. Oops. Yep. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now I've got one for businesses or for occupation. Much better. So now, instead of having just a few, now I have 5,000 different potential letters. So I've selected those features out. You can see some of them are in here, right? So you can see some of them that are highlighted in that nice yellow. And in this case, I'm then going to go to this other one that's joined by attributes by location. I'm going to go to this one and I'm going to say, okay, I want out all of the CRWGM text. Remember, input is the thing we want out. So this top one is, I want that. And I want only the selected feature. That's the only thing I care about. And I want where those features are within the economic values, economic variables. Now, in this, right, I can still choose what fields I want to add. So in this case, I want to go with, let's go with the employment, let's go with the wages, let's go with the agricultural value and the total revenue value, property value, and manufacturing value. That's what the things I want are. So I know that that was pretty quick. This is an agricultural census, so I'm choosing how many people are working in manufacturing, what the value of manufacturing is, what the value of agriculture is, and what the total personal and real estate value is for each of those things. Now in join type, you can say, okay, well, how many things do I want to match together? So depending on which thing, so in this case, each of those polygons is going to match to one of those points. That's fine. This becomes a matter of importance when if you were going the other way around. If you join one to many and you have overlapping features or multiple points within one polygon, you'll end up with multiple polygons that are over top of each other. Just be careful with it. Oftentimes what you may want to do is you may want to take a one-to-one approach. In this case, we do want a one-to-one approach. We want to take a look at it doesn't really matter because again, when I'm dealing with points, that's going to be the same thing. Now, what you can also do is you can say, do I want to discard the records that could not be joined, right? So do I only want to keep, in this case, the joined and selected values? In this case, I do. Most of the time, I actually don't get rid of anything and I just deal with it after the fact. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to do this just because it's going to be valuable to show what it does. So it's not going to keep all of the other features. If it can't be joined, it's not going to keep it. And so in this case, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to save this to a file. And I'm going to say that this is CWRGM letters, business letters with joined with census of ag 1860, right? So you'll notice that I'm starting to do more shorthand things here. I'm starting to drop that down. Now, again, with this one, I don't really care about the unjoinable layers, so I'm going to skip that output. If you might want to take a look at what's in versus out, right? So what things are in something versus what things aren't in something, you can run it. So I'm going to run this, and then we're going to take a look and see what happens to it. But in short, this is going to reduce that data down to just those selected features that have some sort of value in Mississippi. But the other part about this is that it's going to add all of those economic variables to the data set. So what can we see here? All right, so now we can see that we've got this new one, this purple one here. I'm going to uncheck all of the other things here so we can take a look at. So what you'll notice is that the first thing is that it's only in Mississippi. So we're only taking a look at the things in Mississippi, and we're only taking a look at the things that in theory were businesses. So I can right click on this, go to the attribute table, and then take a look and see what we've got going on. So if I go to my hierarchical ones, right? So I've got all these different businesses, and then I've also got, does not look like I have any occupations at this point, but that's okay. So I've got that. And then over here, I have I have 158. So of those 5,000 values in the other one, only 158 actually were able to be joined. And what you can see here is that in this case, I've got agricultural value, my employment amounts, my wages, my value, my property value, and my real estate value. So each one of these things now has part of this point. So if I wanted to, I could take a look and I could say, okay, well, for each of those letters, perhaps I wanted to go and do a graduated points, and I wanted to graduate it by size, and I wanted it by the, I don't know, the manufacturing employment for men. I'm going to classify that out. I'm going to apply it. And now we can see where of each of those letters that was talking about business, how many male manufacturing employees were in those areas. And so different information, right? So it's not summarizing information. Every single one of those points got the value of the polygon beneath it. Unlike this data set, which said, oh, well, I'm going to aggregate out the information and only some of the values I'm going to count them. I'm going to have unique things. If it was an actual value amount, I could average it. So that's how we can combine selections and spatial joins. And we're not going to do any table joins today, but it inputs information in a similar way. We combine information together as just done by attribute values instead of by location values. So that's what I've got for you today. So thank you so much, and I'll see you back here soon.